Hi everyone, welcome to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. I'm Langdon DeMint.
And I'm Julian Taylor.
And welcome to our podcast.
Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Justin Moats, who's an AI and product specialist within software, talking about how AI could be or might not be the big influence in health and safety moving forwards.
I was at a conference the other day and I did feel like I was getting into the Matrix at one point because the guy was talking about AI and one of his suggestions was ask if you're going to use something like ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT what the prompt should be for the query that you want to give to ChatGPT. And you know when you're thinking, whoa, hang on a minute, I'm almost like one of those ever decreasing mirrors. And then the other thing he said was with every prompt he gives to ChatGPT, he tells ChatGPT not to include any false facts or false assumptions. So, which I thought was interesting in terms of the use of it. But I think it's a really important point you make, which is there's still that need for human beings, isn't there, to cast a critical eye over things and make sure that actually what's coming out is as accurate as possible.
Yeah, and you never know what these things are trained on. I mean, it is at the end of the day, looking back on some existing data set, gathering data, taking what you have, synthesizing, and bringing it out. So if it's looking at old data, incorrect data, there's lots of different ways where it could go wrong, but most of the time it's not. And the technology is evolving at such a rapid pace. The new models are coming out, seems like practically every day, get better and better and better. But I do think you run the risk of a little bit of complacency because it is so good. You're using it for, day-to-day tasks in your life, asking it for recipes or workout plans or whatever, and it comes back pretty good. But you do need, for some of these, safety topics, put a critical eye on it. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect.
And I think I kind of view it right now as my rough draft. I mean, it gives me my first run through. I'm slightly late to the game in the utilization here, but it's just like I don't want it to have Langdon's thoughts. It's one of those, and I do think there was a good point of using it as a starter, using it as an identifier. And for organizations, maybe that's something we think about. There's a lot of organizations that we work with, that we talk to, that from a maturity standpoint, they're just trying to get into truly transitioning some of their paper or basic Excel processes over to software. Well, I think there's a twofold. It's one of those, do I start using AI to help me figure out how to streamline it, or do I look at it just as a phase A and then looking at AI or other very much emerging trends, technology to move? And I wonder, Justin, what are your thoughts on that? This could be potentially a getting up to speed quicker even.
Oh, absolutely. I think it definitely can help you get up to speed more quickly. And the other part of it as well is, as you move from Excel to a software to something else, you can then point the AI at it to go back, look and see the things that you may not have been able to do. I mean, that's one of the benefits is it can crunch a lot of data really quickly. You can take even your spreadsheets. I mean, depending on what's in it, you don't want to upload necessarily personal sensitive information into any of these, really any tool, but you could put it in there and start to ask questions just by uploading Excel spreadsheets. So really, that's one of the things that I think is going to depend on person by person, company by company, but there's benefit to be had no matter where you are in the process. Even if you're doing everything on Excel, you can ask a question, get something put out into Excel format to help make your Excel better if that's where you are. So it can be, leading edge, asking it AI chatbots to help people figure out if something's a serious incident fatality potential, or it can be down to just very basic, hey, help come up with an outline of a toolbox talk on working in hot temperatures, right? So it can really meet you wherever you are.
And it is really useful in that way. I've been trying to tell Langdon for a long time. He said he's late to the table. I have to suggest, actually, there was a lot of kicking and screaming involved as well in terms of getting him to the table. But,
Like I did my
I'm
first prompt
interested.
like 2 weeks ago, and I
Yeah,
texted
yeah,
Justin to make sure. I was like, "Dude, you're never gonna guess.
yeah,
This actually came
yeah,
back with something reasonable."
yeah.
Yeah.
I quite like this thing. So,
So
um,
helpful.
so I suppose you sort of mentioned there about sensitive data, Justin. I suppose one thing we should touch on is, I suppose, what are the questions that organizations should consider before they go down the route of using AI within their systems?
Yeah, sensitive data definitely is at that top of the list. Whether it's data that you're putting in that might include personal information, injury. There's a lot of potentially sensitive information that can be gathered in the safety process. With visual AI, you have to ask, what are people comfortable with? What are you willing to put out there? Because it is data that's leaving your organization. In some cases, depending on, and you need to check with the technology provider or the service that you're using. In some cases, the data that you upload or submit may be used to train the model. So again, now you might be potentially leaking proprietary information. So it really is, you do want that sort of close focus on what are the policies of the company or the service you're using. Um, would I be upset if this information leaked into public? I mean, it's really just like anything else. But do I want other organizations being able to take advantage, ask questions about really data that's that's mine if it gets out. So that is definitely something you want to do on the front end. And I think having a broad policy. If you're going to start introducing AI tools and sending people, hey, go ask ChatGPT if this is a hazard, right? You need to have that policy in place to say this is acceptable use, or have enterprise licenses for some of these options that restrict what they're going to do with the data.
And I think that's something you just said. I think it's a great point, because that's why, I mean, really and truly, I wasn't using it for the longest. My thought was, I don't want it to have my perspective, not my facts, because my facts from an EHS perspective are facts. I mean, they're given on whatever, any regulatory site, or whatever it is. But you start thinking, well, I don't want it to get my perspective of EHS or my viewpoint on it. Well, and it is one of those, I suppose, if there's something you've already done from a thought leadership and it's already out there, it's already got it. And it's it's very hard, unless you're on no social media, you're on no internet. It's very hard to capture or keep your own thoughts anyway. So now you start thinking, well, okay, well, how can I ensure that if I'm going to, or if it's going to pull it, or if I'm going to give my perspective, maybe I don't want to put exactly my thoughts in there, but I can generically use the system to then add my spin to it, which it will get then later. So to me, I think there is whether it's a busting myth or overcoming a fear or a challenge, there is something, I think, to that I want to ensure that it's not just taking what I put in there and running away with it, but at the end of the day.
And there's an element of generational gap in there as well, right? I mean, I think we see with any type of technology uptake that younger people are more likely to be on social media putting things out there, don't necessarily see it in the same way that we might. But again, it's important to have that policy of what's okay to put where. If you're using an enterprise model with some of these, OpenAI or something like that, that generally is not going to be included in their uh, overall learning models. So you can put more sensitive information there, but it's like anything else. There's risks. It could be wrong. They could be using your data in different ways, but have a policy, figure out what makes sense for your organization, which tools you're going to have access to which information, and then you can really start to implement it and go wider scale.
Really interesting, isn't it? I was talking about this the other day, that all technology has moved on at such a rapid pace, hasn't it? And everything that gets introduced tends to just get put out there with no real guidelines in terms of this is how to use it, or this is how you should use it. I mean, I even think back to the introduction of email, which kind of just sort of, but it just drip fed into businesses, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then you look at the carnage that you can create with email in terms of getting overwhelmed with information, losing information, communicating badly, all these things that can happen as a result of it. But nobody ever trained us how to use email, did they? They just gave it us. Yeah. And it kind of feels the same with AI, that nobody's really training people how to use it. They're just giving it us. So I think it's an interesting point is to consider that up front. Maybe think about how do we get it out there into our organizations. And I suppose part of that is, Justin, is highlighting what's the benefits to the individual of this. So let's take away that sort of fear factor about this is going to take your job, to actually how is this going to help you? That was kind of leads me to a very long-winded way into a question, which was, I suppose, what are some of the things you see? How do you see this helping people at the sharp end? So not the safety people, not the leaders, but people on the shop floor when it comes to health and safety and being better at it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Is it needs to be helpful to the worker, to the person on the floor doing the job, and I think it really can be. And what it does is it gets them out of some of the software. I mean, obviously we're in the software business. It's kind of funny to say, but we would rather it be easy for a person to come in, interact with the software in the way that makes sense for them, and not have to sign in, fill out a bunch of forms. AI helps get there because you can use things like the natural language processing, where I can talk to, instead of having to go in, fill out a form, go through some check boxes, type something in, I can just use basically speech to text, report something. The AI can then take that, convert it, in some cases, tell me how good of an answer it is, right? So I can say, I saw Langdon trip over a pipe, and then it can say, well, okay, what else? Tell me more, and really prompt to get that information. I can do that without having to sit down and fill out a form behind my desk. The other thing you can do, really, that particularly as workforces change, is it can present information to people in their natural language. So, it's whatever language is best for me, where I can best understand the information. You could use AI to, in some cases, do the kind of the talking head video if you wanted to have it speak directly to me, or you can use a lot of like automatic subtitling to get information in many more languages than you realistically could if you needed to go in and manually translate it. So it's easier for people to use. It's in the language that they understand. It can split up training and things like that into short snippets so I can better understand it and be safer. But really, it just makes me have to think about it less. I can say, okay, I saw something, I can take a picture and upload it, or I can, just start speaking and say, hey, there's a hazard here, instead of having to sit down, go back to a break room, a kiosk computer or something like that to fill it out. So it's a time saver and just makes it easier for people to go about their job, because we know the workers are there to get a job done. In some cases, I can't go home till all of this work is done. Anything that takes me away, pulls me away from that, is slowing me down. And the technology, AI, all different pieces of AI help me get faster, be safer, but take less time out of my day.
I think I was just to sort of build on something you said there as well, Justin, which I think is really important, is underreporting is still such a big issue. And a lot of the times it's because people are scared of the process. So, and we all know that feeling of being presented with a form, and you sit there and look at it and you think, I don't know how to fill this form in.
Yeah, I can never do that. Yeah.
Whereas actually, if it's just a case of just tell me what you see, and then we'll work it out from there, I see some real benefits there in terms of just, again, something that lifts those numbers around stuff that gets reported or gets observed.
Yeah, or snap a picture, right? I mean, it could be as simple as when you're getting ready to perform a task on this machine, take a picture. Um, Add that to your process. And the benefit of AI is it can identify variations. Okay, when Langdon took his picture, the power switch was on instead of off. He shouldn't have done that. But you can also go back, and as situations change and you become interested in new information, then go back and extract that information out. If I have a form with a bunch of drop downs, which right now that's the best way to get the information, I can't go back and then query and say, if I need to know how many people were wearing red hard hats, or whatever the case may be, if that's not in that defined information, I'm not going to get it. But if I have pictures or just kind of this free text reporting where somebody's speaking, I have a chance of capturing that information. I can go back and look at it if that becomes important to me. So it really makes it faster, makes it easier, and helps set you up in the future as needs change.
I think to that point, what would you say would be some first steps that an organization should think about?
From the organizational level, it's understanding what problems are you having. Are you having problems with reporting, underreporting, which we know a lot of people are? Are you having problems with people not wearing PPE, right? There's different solutions and different paths you can go down, understanding what your problems are. And again, it can be very simple. It could be something where you just need to analyze some data to go back and say, we've started to notice increase in near misses in this area. Why, right? What are some of the trends? You can ask questions of the data that way. It just really depends on where you are, what you need. The technology, if you are in an environment, we mentioned visual AI earlier. If you don't already have cameras set up, that's probably not going to be a big win for you, because there's a equipment overlay there, but you could have people take pictures and upload it to look at hazards that way. So it's just really understanding where you are. I mean, it's like anything else in the safety maturity journey, where you are, what problems are you trying to solve, and then understanding how the technology can help you with that. And again, like we mentioned, if you understand where you are, what problems you're trying to solve, ask ChatGPT, ask one of these, one of the LLMs, and it can tell you pretty good. I mean, again, it's not 100%, but it can give you a pretty good idea of ways the technology can help you understanding kind of a little bit about your situation.
And that's what I like and you just hit the nail on the head of how kind of I think about it from an EHS. It's very much you can use this to help you figure out where you are. But at the end of the day, you have to understand whether an EHS professional, you're an organization, you're frontline workers, whatever it is, you have to understand where you are, what you need to refine, and then where you're wanting to go.
Heading into this conversation, I was thinking, so we had a pretty big hailstorm come through my neighborhood a couple weeks ago, and there were all of the roofing people out with their drones flying around, looking at roofs, telling you all the different problems, and here's this spot on your roof that needs to be replaced. So none of the roofing guys, none of kind of the sales guys were up on the roof. Great, this is a great use of technology to help keep people safe, find these problems. So our neighbor, well, a couple doors down, had their roof replaced as a result of this, right? And then their crew came out and there was no fall protection at all. The guys got on the roof, taking off shingles, throwing them down, not a rope to be seen, no fall protection at all. So even if you have the best technology, if people aren't going to follow it, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't help, right? It doesn't matter how good your technology is if people just decide they're not going to do it, if it doesn't fit into their day-to-day job, if it makes it harder. So it really just comes back to, again, all these, it's nothing different than anything else you're doing. You have to find what makes sense for you. What are your people actually going to use? What can blend into the day-to-day and not slow people down, not become a burden, and just not use it? Because that's what we've seen with a lot of the technology before, is there are all these great solutions, but nobody uses it, and then it kind of falls away until the next buzzword comes along.
Yeah, and it's that same old thing we talked about earlier, isn't it? Does it actually help people to do the job more easily? Because if it doesn't, it's probably not going to get used. And it's just going to be another redundant thing, which is interesting. I suppose one last thing, Justin, and we've kind of touched upon it, but I think it's really important, because I was at a conference with about 150 safety professionals last week, and I actually asked the question, who trusts AI? And do you want to guess how many hands went up?
Not many.
Yeah. And then I turned it around and said, who doesn't trust AI? How many hands went up? And a lot of hands went up. So I suppose sort of one of the final comments is to sort of talk, how do we address that trust issue?
I think it's good not to trust, right? I mean, it's one of those things that the technology, it's a fallible technology. Lots of things are, but it's kind of back to what I mentioned earlier, is it doesn't have to be 100%. It just has to be better than the other human inputs that you're getting in. The first thing is to understand it is not going to be perfect 100% of the time. No matter what the technology is, you're going to need to lay eyes on it. You're going to need to understand how, look at it, verify it. But what it can do is it can save a lot of time. It can help eliminate a lot of the barriers to getting you there. You could upload an image of a workplace. it might not identify all the hazards. It might identify a couple things as hazards that aren't. But if it does 80% of it correctly, then that's a big step forward for you. It just needs to be better than where you are today. And I think understanding that and building processes where you aren't just relying on the AI 100% of the time, you put the people in place, can help from a lot of standpoints. Of it helps people feel better about it. It's not trying to replace my job. It's just trying to take away some of the things that are harder for me to do, or things that I'm kind of the mundane tasks. But also it helps put some of those guardrails in place of, look, we can't rely on it. We're not trying to rely on it. We have processes in place to get us what we need, but still have kind of those checks and balances.
I think this has been a really interesting conversation, and we do intend to carry on the conversation, don't we, Langdon? So one of the things that we're planning to do in the near future, so keep listening, everybody, is to have a conversation with a UX designer. So again, a crazy title that a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's all about user experience. But it's a really fascinating conversation that doesn't just relate to software. It relates actually to all of the things that you do around health and safety in terms of designing process, designing forms, designing the way that people are going to do things. How do we do that in a way that actually helps to drive better engagement? So that's something that we want to discuss, and we will be discussing in the near future. I suppose I'm going to say thank you for coming on, Justin. I'm really pleased that after 4 years, Langdon has finally invited you onto the podcast. I think he was possibly waiting for you to get a haircut and gave up. We will make exceptions to people with hair and allow them to come on the podcast, but thank you for coming on. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And I suppose it just goes to Langdon for the final word.
Justin, we appreciate you joining. Thank you. We look forward to, we'll bring you back. It won't be another 4 years. We'll make sure you come back and help share some wealth of knowledge of how we can utilize tools better and how we can really help streamline our operations. But listeners, for all you out there, while you fear and are scared for AI and how it's going to attack you like iRobot, just remember, we're not at that point yet. So ultimately, utilize the technology to help your own organizations, and stay safe, stay healthy, and watch each other's back out there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you stream your podcast, or you can visit us at evotix.com.
And if you've liked today's podcast or you found some value from it, we'd really appreciate it if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review or a rating. It really means a lot to us. Thank you.